Hello. Emma, you're,
Hello.
oh,
Can you
boom.
hear me?
Look at that. We're great. Oh my, I'm 99% sure I think I pressed that everyone had to add the Zoom meeting ID, which I haven't done the last two sessions. So apologize to our panelists and to all of our lovely attendees, and thanks for putting up with us. See, someone said, I see you, Yahoo. And that's all that matters. Things are somehow working, which is great. So if you see me kind of look down at the bottom of my screen, I'm just making sure that everything's taken care of in case somebody, emailed, but it looks pretty good so far. So welcome to all of our panelists for night 3 or episode 3, I guess, of Courtside Seats. Very excited to have each of you on. Obviously, Emma and Robyn, I've gotten to know you since we were young tots playing back, the old Horton High QEH rivals. And Dawna, I'm so happy to have you on board. I think the positions that you've held and what you currently do for a living is something that's really exciting for me and exciting for and it's something that's very exciting for our young female athletes that are looking at getting into a position as an official. So excited to hear your perspective on what that was like for you having such a high position. But without further ado, I guess we'll get started. I'm just reading some people typing in that they had to type in the code manually as the link wouldn't work. So, we have 42 people on, which is great. And we do post it up on YouTube afterwards. And then we probably have about 100 views on each of those. So I'm excited. It's about 28 degrees here. So perfect. People are saying it's working. Great. All right. I'm done reading everything and we'll get started. So in alphabetical order, Dawna, I'm going to pull everything up because I want to make sure I'm getting this right. So Dawna Townsend, coming to us from PEI, even though I know you're currently not in PEI, NBA official scorer for the Toronto Raptors and internationally licensed official with the International Basketball Association, which is awesome. My good friend Emma Duinker up in my top left corner, director with Point Guard College and an assistant coach with University of Windsor women's basketball team, and I believe an official as well. I think I added that in last.
You can tell me that.
Yeah, I sure can. Probably give. I tell everyone that I think when they're officials, they just give as many technicals as possible, but I'm sure you're quite nice.
Yet to give my first.
Pardon?
Yet to give my first.
It'll be Robyn. And Robyn Fleckenstein, who's here joining us all the way from Calgary. So it's what time is it? 4:13 out there now. Probably still nice and sunny, but she's the head coach of the Mount Royal University women's basketball team in your second year. Just finished your second year? Just finished your first year?
I just finished my first year. So as of August, I will have finished my first year. So how's that?
All right. So lots of different people are, yes, different people, but different positions on the call. And as I was saying to each of you before our attendees joined, that one of the biggest things that I really wanted to support was just showcasing that, even though we're all from the East Coast, there are positions in basketball across the country, and it isn't just as a head coach or an assistant coach or an official. We've had different directors on here, professional players, and I just think it's really valuable to just showcase that, when we finish playing basketball, that we don't just get, pushed to the side and that's it. And maybe coach, if you have any young children coming up, you can really find your niche somewhere across the country or overseas or international, whichever it may be. But, you don't have to stop playing and then, try to play in women's leagues, which I've done. I feel like we probably all have done that. And I've since retired, which is, I think everyone's happy with that. So I'm going to go right into our first question. So I'm sure that you've tuned into the other ones or have watched a couple of the other episodes. So I do have a couple of questions that I have for all of you as a group. But anyone who's on the call or on the webinar, there's a little Q&A box that's down at the bottom, I believe. So feel free to type in there and I'll ask any question that comes through there, assuming that we have time and that it makes sense for who is actually on our panel. There is a chat box, so I see some people typing in there, which is great. So I'll try to read off all of those different things, but we'll get started. And again, can't see you. I always say this. My mom's gotten used to it. Liz, we cannot see you and we cannot hear you. She always has a good chuckle over that. Maybe she'll make a cameo this time. She did the first one and didn't the second one. That's okay. So my first question for each of you is, I guess, how did you get to where you are? So a bit of your history as an athlete and how you managed to make your way into your current position. And then maybe even after that, kind of what you do. I know, Dawna, not all of us are as familiar with what you do in your position with the Raptors, and Emma with your position with Point Guard College. So I'll go in alphabetical order. Dawna, go for it.
I'll try to remember all that. Okay, so I mean, I played basketball starting, grade 7 or something like that. I grew up in PEI, so played my high school ball there at Colonel Gray, and started playing in university. Had a bit of a circuitous route. I went to Mount A at the time. They had a university women's team, which I think then they didn't for a while, and then maybe now they do again. I'm not even sure about that. Yeah. And then I went to UPEI and played there for a couple years. And I think I was always a little bit, I wasn't really very good. So I was always kind of thinking in the background, well, what am I really going to do? So after 2 years at UPEI, I transferred and went to a school called the Technical University of Nova Scotia, which is now part of DAL. It's their engineering school. And I did it's Daltech, exactly. But it was a college then, no, it was a university, but a separate, smaller university. Like they would have played college. They weren't big enough to have a women's team or anything like that. So that kind of ended my official playing career in a way by making that choice. I did computer engineering when I was there. So that I stayed, as you were just saying, Tasia, I stayed in the game just with women's leagues and stuff like that. I did an MBA at Queen's, and when I transferred there, I dabbled with the idea because I still had eligibility left of playing, but again, that wasn't really going to happen. But there was somebody that I met in Kingston at the time who was a FIBA official and talked about the possibility of starting to do that. And that was appealing just because it was money in the pocket while I was at school and all that kind of stuff. So I started reffing then off and on. And when I moved to Toronto for my job, I guess, I still continued to do that. And, again, still played in women's leagues until I was reffing at a level where I would have been reffing the same leagues I was playing in. So that became problematic. And just continued in the reffing pathways and trying to get as, far as I could, and was lucky enough to have an opportunity to try out for my international license. And then represented Canada for 5 or 6 or 7, however many years that is. It all blends together, and had some great opportunities then. It was actually, I had opportunities to travel and experience basketball at a level I would have never had as a player, which was really quite rewarding. And the Raptors thing is awesome, but almost a side gig really for me. They're on our Raptors operations, like table operations, during games, there are probably like half of us at least are officials or are in the game in some way. Mm-hmm. And so I got that gig through friends years ago, and it's been a really fun ride. Was in Japan actually with the Raptors just in the fall. So that's been great. And that's, at this point, that's almost the only way I'm still involved. I'm involved in some teaching for our officials in Ontario, but that's about it.
Do you have a championship ring? I feel like everyone would like to know that.
I do, actually, yes. I saw the first week that
brought it out.
That's right. So same thing. Yeah, I do have one.
Oh, that's awesome. None of us do, or I don't. Emma, Robyn, were you guys lucky enough to get one? Of course not. No, that's great. I think that's that's really interesting that you touched on being able to travel, which is something that I know as an athlete, we always look at like, oh, we can go play internationally, we can travel, but I don't think we really see, or maybe we weren't knowledgeable in the fact that you can also be an official and travel and do something that maybe you couldn't do as an athlete, whether, you know, you got injured or you couldn't play at that caliber. And this is another avenue that you could take. That's interesting. Yeah. All right, Emma, go ahead.
Okay.
How'd you get to where you are, and what do you do now?
That's a good question. So I guess the journey started when I was 4 years old, and I just made the decision to play professional basketball one day. All through when I was growing up, my brothers were a little bit older and always played basketball, and my sister and I just looked up to them and wanted to play with the boys. And so we just that's kind of how we started in it, and then just fell in love with the game. So we played. I went to Acadia to play my 5 years there, and I was blessed to be able to be coached by my high school coach, Bev Greenlaw, legendary, as Robyn knows, CBG. So after playing at Acadia, I pursued my dream of playing professionally, and I went over to Germany for 3 years and played on a couple of different teams over there, and then just made the decision. I kind of had this growing urge to go back to school, and so I decided it was the right move for me as I started kind of researching where to go and what I wanted to do. I was interested to see if coaching was something that I might be, that I might want to do eventually. And so I was reaching out to different schools and different teams. And originally I was looking in the US, but there's a lot of complications about going there as a graduate assistant. And so I kind of looked at the options in Canada, and it took me a while to find the school, but I was like, oh, Windsor, yeah, they're a pretty good team. And they have a pretty good program. Yeah, only won 5 national championships in a row. But sorry, I just reached out and I was like, hey, Chantel, like, I don't know if you remember me, but you guys beat us in the nationals by 40, but like, I'd love to come and help coach at your school. So she's like, yes, I remember. She's like, we prepped for you. She's like, we had Boyana on you. And I was like, yes, I remember. I didn't make a shot. So anyway, so that was that's a great experience. But so Chantel agreed to take me on. And so I've been in Windsor coaching now for 4 going on 5 years. Yeah. I was lucky to get the opportunity to be the interim head coach last year as Chantel took a sabbatical and actually traveled the world and got to experience a lot of amazing things. And now I'm assistant again. But so I do that kind of on part-time. And then my actual job is with Point Guard College, PGC basketball. And so I got involved with them at the end of my university career and fell in love with the way that they teach the game and really teach life and leadership lessons through basketball. And so I was hooked, and I worked with them every summer until last spring when I came on full-time with them. And so now I currently work with our basketball development team. And so a number of different roles there, but I do serve as a director and kind of a trainer of our staff. And currently I'm facilitating our online shooting college. So all you athletes out there, you got to check it out.
Do you have a link? I can throw it in the chat.
Shoot. Yeah. I'll search for that. I'll search for that in a minute. But it's a great resource. But anyway, yeah, that's where I'm at right now.
Now, is this, I am convinced it is, this is the same Point Guard College that was here in Halifax, like when we were all in high school?
High.
Yes. Yeah, okay.
Yep, I never went as an athlete, but Coach Ken Friedman, another legend, he got me involved as a coach, and then I just kind of moved on with them from there. So, yep, same one.
No P dribbles. What I engaged to C4. Got it.
Oh my gosh, that's
wow,
good. It was one of my favorite camps. All right, Robyn, over to you, my friend.
Tasia, I want you to move to Calgary so you can be my assistant. You can tell Scott Monroe I said that.
You know what? I'm going to clip this clip and send it to him. He'll be okay.
Yeah.
Uh,
Just to throw it out there.
oh my. Is it nice out
Well,
there?
yeah, it's really nice.
Okay.
Just saying. We're really, really close to the mountains if you like the outdoors.
Perfect. It was golfing today, so that counts.
Yeah, that counts.
Yeah.
We have golf courses.
Perfect.
My journey basically is the same as Emma's. I don't know, like we went to high school together, we went to university together. I've been stalking Emma for years, so you know. Uh, I played at Horton High School and was fortunate to be Emma's teammate for 3 years. Then I spent my first year at St. Mary's in Halifax, and I redshirted there. Didn't really think it was the best fit for me, and ended back home at Acadia. I was at Acadia for 2 years, and then I decided to take a year to really see if basketball was for me. I wasn't in the best place mentally with it, and so took a year, decided that I would coach at Horton. Actually, that was my first coaching experience. I was an assistant coach with IMAC at Horton, and then came back the next year, was just convinced I was going to come back to play, spent the whole summer training, was really excited. A week before school started, I was in training camp and I blew my ACL. So the world had different plans for me, and I took that year to do my first head coaching at Horton. So that was kind of the segue for me, is that injury really pushed me in another direction, and I just kind of took it from there. I then coached a Basketball Nova Scotia provincial team, the U14 development team. I think that was what it was. That seems like a really long time ago. And I graduated. So after I graduated, I had no idea what I was doing with myself. And my mom was living in Edmonton, so I decided I'd spend maybe a year in Edmonton. That seemed like a good idea at the time. And I knew someone who knew Scott Edwards, who was the women's coach at U of A, and they reached out for me, and Scott agreed to take me on as an assistant. So after that, I got into ed and was like, okay, I'm going to do education and I'm going to coach at U of A. So I got on a plane and I moved to Edmonton, Alberta, and I spent 4 years with Scott at U of A with the Pandas, and that was a pretty cool formative time for me. I got to coach provincial team out here in Alberta. And after my 4 years, I didn't really know what was next, but I knew I wanted to head coach. I knew that was like a dream of mine. I thought maybe, like 45, that could be something I could do. I could transition out of teaching. So I applied for my master's at Vic. They have a master's in education program. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. So I got into the master's in coaching program. I go out for my first summer of classes, and I get a call from a former player who had been coaching at Augustana, which is a college in outside Edmonton. And she was like, listen, like, my life is leading me in another direction. Would you be interested in applying for this job? And I was like, yeah, that's like totally the job that I want. So within a month, I had my interview and I was hired, and I went home from Victoria and I moved my whole life to Camrose. So I spent 2 years coaching at Augustana and had a really good experience there. It was a really awesome thing. But last summer was feeling like it might be a good opportunity for me to start, getting some feelers out and figuring out if U Sports was something that I could qualify for. So I did a lot of interviewing. I applied for a lot of jobs. And in August of last year, I got hired at Mount Royal. So now I'm coaching U Sports and not always sure what I'm doing, but I love it. And it's like totally my dream. So yeah, there you go. Just said yes to a lot of things, Tasia.
For any athlete that's on here listening, and I see a few, you just heard it here first. Coaches are also learning, and we don't always know like exactly what we're doing. So I know a lot of times, you lean on athletes and your assistant coaches and the people surrounding you to navigate your way through that. So I think that was, an important piece to share. One question I have from that, Robyn, and anyone can answer, and I think this is always important to speak about, when athletes are trying to figure out when, basketball is not for them anymore. And I think that comes at different phases. I know sometimes it's just I graduated and like I'm good to go, like I'm off to find a career. And other times it's very challenging. Like I know personally when I graduated at first, I was like, great, like let's go make some money. And then all of a sudden it kind of hits you like, whoa, this is challenging and I don't know how to navigate my way through this. So it's one of the questions that I do ask if we get around to it, but you already brought it up. So I just wanted to kind of explore that. And I think also, how do you navigate the side when you're realizing that you're not playing or you don't want to play or you aren't really sure what you want to do? And how do you have those conversations with the people around you? Because I think a lot of times as athletes or people that are like really in tune with their sport and that's what they've done their whole life, that all of a sudden when people start hearing they don't want to do it anymore, there's a lot of like, well, why don't you? Like, you're so good at what you do. Keep playing, keep this, keep that. And that's very challenging. So any advice you'd have for going through that phase? And again, anyone can answer because I think we've all kind of gone through that point of not playing anymore at an elite level. It's a big question.
Yeah, I'll hop in there. Because I mean, I eventually got to a place where it was like, I don't really want to play anymore. I'm good. So I mean, the first thing I would say is first of all, understand that it's coming. At some point, the ball will stop bouncing and you will stop playing. For any player, it doesn't matter what level they're at. You're gonna stop playing basketball eventually. So understand and start accepting the fact that at some point it will end, and that's okay because that's normal for everybody. And then the second piece is just it's challenging to block out other people and other people's opinions. You're the one that knows what you want the best and the most. And just because you're stopping playing basketball doesn't mean, your life is over if you have no other interests, right? And so I think the second thing is listen to yourself, because I know most athletes that I've talked to who are ready to stop are saying like, it's just not fun anymore, or it's a chore going to the gym, or I don't want to go to my workouts anymore. That's the point that I got to as well. And I was like, okay, like, and it's okay to stop. Mm-hmm. And so I think just listen to yourself more than you're listening to other people, because you know what you want more than anybody else does. And then also just prepare yourself that it is coming. And I guess, I'm sure Dawna and Robyn can speak to this, and Tasia even as well, is like, even though you're immersed in basketball, a lot of your life, it doesn't mean you can't be interested in other things as well. Mm-hmm. And so keep that in mind. And it's okay to explore those other things because you can probably be good at those things as well. Yeah, just my take on it.
Mm. Dawna or Robyn, anything you want to add to that?
Go ahead.
Okay. Like I think for me, I don't know that I ever wanted to stop. Like I think that basketball was done with me before I was done with it. But I look back and I think that, like, it's a little bit hokey, but in a way, if I hadn't made that decision at that point, that I was like good with taking other steps, then I think I wouldn't be where I am now. So I play women's league. Like I actually just blew my other ACL like 6 months ago. So, or sorry, a year and 6 months ago. And so I'm done. I've rehabbed, everything's fine. But sometimes your body just doesn't want to do things. And so it's good to understand that, like Emma said it, we're good at other stuff. And I think that was one thing that I struggled with. And I know some of the other panelists from other weeks have talked about that. Like your identity becomes so ensconced in basketball. It's like, like, who am I without basketball? What am I good at without basketball? And so I think that was something that I spent a lot of time trying to sort out and trying to be okay with. So I would just, like, I say it to every athlete that is a fifth year, like we talk about it all through their fifth year, how much, you can think about enjoying the things that you kind of hate. Like Emma said it, like Maybe you don't really like going to workouts by the end, but it's like, hey, you can enjoy this. This is your last long road trip, or this is your last preseason game, or this is your last whatever. And we try to make it a big experience and really talk about it, because I think that makes it real as opposed to avoiding it.
Yeah, I think, sorry, go ahead, Dawna.
No, I was just gonna say, I think for me, it was maybe a little bit different in that I was trying to figure out the best way to stay involved in the game. Like, I knew realistically early on, maybe that my playing career wasn't, going to take me anywhere, or wasn't going to maybe even last the 5 years of university. But the game was always so much part of me that how I needed to be involved, somehow. And I think, maybe because I did end sooner, I never really thought of coaching. I mean, I considered it, but thought that wasn't a good avenue for me, because I would have been one of those frustrated coaches that was really trying to still work out their playing years, so that didn't make sense. But I loved being on the floor, and I loved the camaraderie. Like, basketball for me was always, if I moved to a city because I did a co-op at my undergrad, I moved to a new city, and like, it was social because I got involved in a women's league, and I met people, there. Same thing when I moved to Toronto, and so reffing became that for me. I could stay on the court, I could stay involved in the game. It was the social aspect, and met tons of friends doing that. But I had other avenues that I was pursuing from a career perspective, I guess.
With your note on officiating, I'm going to go right into asking you and Emma, what has your experience been like in that sense? I know Lou touched on it a little bit in our last week's session, because she's an official right now. I know her and Carly have had some good interactions, I hear. I'd love to tune in and see some of that. But what has your experience been like, and do you have any advice for anyone who's looking at getting into officiating? I know it's something that for me, I tried for 1 year, and I found it to be challenging, because you are dealing with a lot of outside voices when you're on the court. So I'm just curious what advice you have. And I guess, Dawna, for you, like, you were officiating at such a high level. How did you get the confidence to get yourself to that position?
Okay, I'll jump in, Emma. I guess I'll go
Yeah.
first. Yeah, it's interesting. I think a lot of people don't think of officiating because, as a player, or even as a coach or a spectator, you've seen some pretty, negative interaction. Why would you want to be that person, put yourself in that position, all that kind of stuff. And for sure, when I was starting out, that was definitely the case. I spent a lot of time in the locker room after games crying, basically, because, it was particularly tough or whatever. I always, my first job out of my MBA was on a trading floor at one of the big banks. And so I always actually saw it as I was building, a tough skin. It was another way to build those skills. So I really, I don't know, I took it as a challenge, I guess, if you like. But as you get better at it, and you do fairly quickly, especially as someone who's been involved in the game and plays the game. And as Lou said last week, for God's sake, we need more people that know the game, that played the game, that have experienced, whether it's playing or coaching or whatever. But as you gain that experience and credibility, it becomes so much easier. You have a rapport with the coaches, and it makes a big difference. And then, frankly, I laugh all the time. Reffing internationally was awesome because you never understood anything anybody was saying to you. So it wasn't. It was actually way better.
Recommendations for officiating: go international.
Go international.
Yeah.
But I'm curious to hear what it's been like for you, Emma, as you're starting to dabble in that.
Yeah, well, Dawna, I love what you said about, I think so many athletes, just male or female, don't even think about reffing because it's like as a player and as a coach, you're all on the same team, you're all on the same side. And it's like, then there's the refs, right? And it's, they have bad experiences because people yell at them, or they're, you've had some experiences with poor refs, and there's not a good reputation around them, unfortunately. But the reality has been, for me at least, that my gosh, we need more good female refs. And the reality is, if you've played the game, especially at a higher level, you have a deeper, different understanding, I believe.
Feel for the game. A feel for it. Yeah.
Yes. The flow of the game. What, when an athlete's going up to take a layup, and you just see it differently and see, that's not natural. They did get pushed off there, right? Mm-hmm. And so, it's just been really interesting experiencing that. And the confidence thing at first was an issue for me as well. But the more I got into it and realized how much my playing and just knowledge of the game served me as a referee, it's like, I might not know all the very particulars yet, but I know how to play the game, and I know what the game should look like. And so I think any athlete who's considering it, or even hasn't considered it, the fact that you've played and have had that experience, take confidence in knowing you know something about the game. And you're able to actually view the game that way.
It's so true. You can be in a situation where like a coach is all over you and your partner about something, and you're like, what are you talking about? How can we only have shot 6 free throws and they've shot 13? And you're like, well, they're in a 2-3 zone, coach, and they're not doing it. And he's like, whoa, okay, because you actually know something about the game.
Yeah. Right. Sometimes you have to actually exert that for them to understand. Yeah. Oh yeah, they do, but you just gotta let them know. And then the other kind of perspective that I've had being an athlete is, I wish that I started reffing as soon as possible, because the respect now that not that I didn't respect refs before, but gosh, now I see it from a different perspective. And I think as an athlete, as a young athlete, any young athlete that's out there watching, I mean, it's a great opportunity to learn more about the game, to have to study the rules so specifically and really understand what is a foul and what's not a foul according to the rule book, and what's going to get called is so beneficial. And so, any young athletes that I'm coaching, I really want them to get involved, if just at a low level, to start understanding the game at a different level.
The old 0, 1, 2 step now is it's there. And it's challenging when you're trying to understand it and then teach it. And then also when you hear other people from the stands yelling like, that's a travel, and it's like, no, the rule actually changed, and it might look a little bit different now, but if you're in that side of it as an official, you're learning that piece a lot earlier, and you can educate people. We do have a question coming in, which I think is a great one. Are there any things that you have learned by reffing or officiating that you could pass along that can help from a coaching perspective? And I think maybe, Emma, that goes back to like, you wish you had have started officiating earlier to get a better understanding of the game.
Yeah, I mean, again, Dawna can probably speak to this more than I can, as I'm relatively inexperienced. But I mean, after head coaching with the university for a year, and having that perspective, and then having refed before that, it made me realize, like, as a coach, you have to understand there are two sides to it. It's not just your team. Yes, your kid might be getting hit a little here, hit a little there. It's literally the same thing at the other end. And from my experience, it's rare that there are teams blatantly just trying to do things that go against the rules. And so, like, just understanding there's two sides. Calls are going to be missed on both sides, but the refs are trying the best that they can, but also you can't see it from the ref's perspective. So like, I think a lot of coaches just see it very narrow-mindedly in a way, in like just focusing on their team, and it's no fault of theirs. I think it's part of the culture almost, but understand there's a lot more to it than just your team and what's happening with them.
Yeah, I think that to the extent it's possible or feasible, I think any coach could benefit from, blowing the whistle for, a rec game or whatever, something like that, just to get that perspective. I mean, I think it is different than how you perceive it from the sidelines, for sure. And the other thing we always talk about as officials is that coach that natters and talks and complains constantly, you tune them out. It's the coaches that pick their spots, and that you say, frankly, as a roughing team on the floor, if you say, if Robyn says something, we should listen, because that means that she's seen something that we should think about, but if it's Robyn that's talking from tip to the end, you just filter it out.
Interesting you mentioned that conversation with the coach. I know Rugby Nova Scotia, Jack was doing a session on the relationship between the coach and the official. I didn't get to tune into it, but I found that interesting. So Robyn, I'm going to throw it over to you. And I think I want to know how, right now, is it being your first, well, you just finished your first year as a U Sport head coach. How do you manage those conversations with officials so that, as Dawna just alluded to, they're actually listening to you, and it's not like, oh my gosh, this coach won't be quiet, so we're just gonna, let that one slide. But I'm curious, from your first year of experience at that level, what has that interaction been like for you with officials? And maybe is there anything that you hope to improve on for next year?
Well, so I should start by saying that I'm dating an official. So I feel like my perspective is maybe a lot different than a lot of other people. So I like going off what Dawna was saying, like he all the time is like, you have to remember that they're people and you have to be nice to them. And I'm like, I can't be nice to them. They won't make the call that I want. And so I'm very conscious of shutting my mouth a lot of the time when I want to say things that I shouldn't say. So I think I really try to play my spots. So it's like, I'm not going to ask for every single thing that I want, because like Emma said, like I know things are being missed, and they're missed at every level. It's not like this is just a U Sport thing. So I spend a lot of time trying to be very courteous. And I think the other piece is, as a coach, I spend all this time all week prepping my athletes for 2 games on the weekend, and they're never perfect, right? So I think the day that I get to like absolutely go up and down the officials for 40 minutes is the day that my athletes are all not making mistakes. So that hasn't happened yet. So I'm just kind of waiting that out. Maybe by year 5, I'm thinking. Yeah,
just a flawless game.
Just pure perfection. That's when I'm going to be like, okay, now refs, it's your job. It's your turn to get told. I think that the real hardship is trying not to like hold a grudge. I don't know if refs do. Matt says they don't, but it's like the technical piece is, it's sometimes you can feel kind of guilty if like one game I like totally lost my mind and I got a T, and of course that never happens because I'm always very cool, calm, and collected. So I think that that's more.
I need to tune into a couple of things this year just to find out.
So chill, Tasia. I just sit the whole game. I never move.
Robyn, you're yelling again.
Robyn, you yell talk. Yes. So that's where I stand on it. Is I understand.
So we have someone who's a new official, never played basketball. However, they've been around basketball for years. All their children played and her husband still plays. Should she constantly be watching games on TV to get a better sense of the game?
I guess it depends on what she's watching, because I would say as a newer official, did I hear that? Is she a newer official?
Yeah.
It's going to be the most critical thing, I guess, for her is going to be rules knowledge. That's the biggest piece, especially where she hasn't played. And so I'm not sure that watching NBA games will, is great, but it's not going to necessarily help a lot, I don't think, for her officiating. I mean, going out into the gym would help a lot for sure, her local gym, and hearing the interaction and watching the officials in action and seeing what officials, that might be reffing a level similar to what she would be would probably benefit, I would think.
I think for me, when I had started, that was an interesting piece where my headspace when I was officiating was at a high level. It was coming from a university level, but I was coaching U10 or officiating U10. So I think to just jump in on that a little bit is like you said, Dawna, watching the skill level that you are officiating. So I think there's, a very big difference to the speed and the athletic ability of an older group or males versus females. And I think that would be helpful. But I mean, watching any basketball is always good.
And it's interesting, Emma, I'm not sure how you started and what you've been roughing, but we start out our new officials usually with our provincial stuff, like here with the OBA little kids. And it's literally the hardest level to referee because there would be a travel or, an out of bounds or a foul on every single play because they're not hugely skilled. They're still, getting used to their playing, and coordination isn't great. And the parents are all, very intense and, developing potential NBA players, and they're in the stands yelling, and it's so hard. And that's where we start our officials off. And I mean, we usually, obviously, you try to put a new official with an older official and all that kind of stuff, but it's hard.
Yeah.
I think that the one little piece that I would mention, and I used to referee intramural games at the university, and these guys would come up to me like, man, it's a foul, man, it's a travel. I'm like, they're like, oh, that's what they call in the NBA. And I'm like,
this is not
guys, you're playing intramural basketball at the the university. But I think the point also being that depending on what kind of basketball you're watching, all the rules aren't the same. And so understanding the rule set that you're probably going to be reffing, like NBA, they just have different rules. If you're watching, college basketball in the US, those are much different rules as well. And so just being maybe conscious of those things, and that there may be a difference depending on what you're reffing.
Good points. All right. Mentorship. I think this is something that I'm just reading something to my side to make sure I'm getting all my key points. So I'm not ignoring anybody. Mentorship, I think, is something that is becoming more and more discussed. I know a lot of times there's probably informal mentorship pieces where you just kind of, you have a coach that has taught you a lot along the way, and they kind of become your mentor without actually sitting down and coming up with a plan of sorts. I know the Coaches Association of Canada has one coming up, and I think there's a few basketball coaches on that. So I'm just wondering, with all of you starting in your path along, getting into the officiating or into coaching or directing, Emma, who were your mentors along the way, and what advice would each of you have when it comes to finding people and working with people that can help you, fine tune the skills that you need in order to pursue the career that you're looking for?
Yeah, I can step in there. I know, like Tasia and Robyn, obviously you guys probably know my mentors, but for me, I mean, Bev Greenlaw coached me from when I was 13 until I was 20 something. He still coaches me.
Still coaching.
Yeah, he still coaches me. And so he was a huge influence in my life, as well as Ian McMillan, who is father of Robyn. And those two guys just, first of all, the way that they coach and the way that they teach is so much further than basketball, which is why I keep in touch with them now and check in, and we converse regularly. But they were big influences because of the things that they taught me other than basketball: how to treat people, how to work as a team, how to be a leader, how to take on challenges, all of those things. And I was lucky that they, took me and the other athletes that they work with under their wing. But I think the big thing about mentorship, especially for young athletes, is start when you're young, seeking out people who have been where you want to be, and look to them and ask them to be your mentor. and that way you can kind of ensure that you have somebody, you know, guiding your way. And I, you know, looking back, if I didn't have those guys, like I don't really know where I would be, and I'm not sure who I would have turned to. I'm sure I would have, you know, had somebody else influence me, but yeah, they were just a huge role and kind of relentless with me about demanding excellence in a loving way, right? Which I think is another benefit of having a mentor. One of the key benefits is they tell you the truth over the harmony, over the nice stuff, right? They tell you like it is, and if you're slipping up, they'll let you know. I think that's one of the huge benefits of a mentor, but they love you along the way. And so, yeah, I'm just really grateful for those two guys in particular throughout my career.
Also, don't mind me. My computer is trying to charge, so I had to readjust my laptop here. I apologize for all of this action. Robyn or Dawna, anything on mentorship or mentors?
You can go, Dawna, if you have some.
Oh.
Yeah. There you go.
Okay, I'll go. It's interesting. When I started officiating and was developing as an official, mentorship was thrown. I remember talking about it a lot. Like, find a mentor. You need a mentor. You need someone to, and I felt a lot of pressure to find a mentor. And I think, sometimes it just, or for me anyway, it didn't happen quickly, and it just happened supernaturally, I mean, having said that, I put myself in a lot of positions to find someone, like for officiating, it's, camps, development camps, and, tournaments and things like that, where you're going to have more experienced people doing what you want to do. So, eventually something clicked, and when it did, it was fabulous. And my mentor, you guys won't know him, but his name was Don Klein, and he was a legend in officiating in Canada. He died a few years ago, and he was a huge influence on me, and helpful, and open doors, and all that kind of stuff. And it was great. But I would also say, and I don't know if we'll touch on this at some point, but my peer group, like I can sense with Emma and Robyn, was equally as important for me, to bounce things off of, and to, help when times were tough and all that kind of stuff. And there were about 4 or 5 women coming up through the officiating ranks in Ontario at the same time that I did, and we clicked. And it was, road trips to Laurentian, and it was on the phone after that tough game in Windsor, and it was, some coach took a piece out of you, and how do you deal with that, all that kind of stuff, supporting, each other, which is, a little bit of development help, and a little bit of, female to female help, which is also important. But it was probably a combination. And then there were the third role I think I looked to were people that had, blazed trails or done things that I wanted to do, that made it easier for me. And maybe we didn't have a close relationship. Maybe we did interact or have, some of that, but not like a mentor type relationship, but they were still helpful in, paving the way and helping me, for sure.
Last but not least.
Like Bev and Ian, like they were huge. What can I say? Bev and Ian coached us in high school. Then Bev was at Acadia when Em and I were there. So obviously huge. Ian became my stepdad when I was 10 or 11. And since that moment, he's watched over me and pushed me and demanded from me. And I am so grateful. But I think the cool thing for me is I've also stumbled my way along and found more people. And I would say Scott Edwards at U of A, he's a big mentor for me. He took me under his wing for 4 years and like really helped me figure out what Can West was in comparison to the AUS. I would say that our men's coach at Augustana, Dave Drabiak, he really mentored me in my new role. And, when I didn't know what I was doing, he was there answering my questions and holding my hand when I was very confused. And I think that the cool thing is I've continued to find mentors, and I didn't just stop with one. And to build off what Dawna's saying, like for sure, as young athletes, like we watched older females who were doing what we wanted to do, so I think Carly Clark she coached Emma and I in CP when we were coming up and through, and now she's killing it at Ryerson. Like, obviously she was someone that we watched and we were like, that's really awesome. So there've been lots of cool people to kind of follow, and you don't feel like you're the first one having to do all these things, and that's a nice thing.
Have each of you found that anytime that you've really reached out looking for advice from certain people that you know that they have a skill set and you want to reach out to them and kind of pick their brain, have all of you found that for the most part everyone's fairly receptive, or have you had some people kind of close the door and, you know, hold their cards close to their chest?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I like what Dawna said about, you know, also like, you know, you have to put yourself out there, right? And so I think, like, from my experience, I wouldn't put myself out there with somebody who I didn't think had my best interest in mind, or had, you know, was interested in helping me. Sometimes it's not always those who are the smartest or the best in it, who might be the best mentors. They might be the ones who actually just have a deep care for you and want to help you get to where you want to be. And so, yeah, because of that, I've never had that struggle, but maybe the others have had a different experience.
Like, I would say when I have had questions, people have been really willing to answer them. And I mean, for me, I'm always actively looking for females younger than me or the same age as me who want to do what I'm doing, that like want to have chats about coaching, because I think there's so many things that go unsaid in this career. And so I actually just got off the phone with one. She and I were just talking about what it's like to be a head coach during COVID. So I think that there's lots of opportunities to
like this virtual
virtually. Yeah. There's lots of opportunities to ask the questions. And I think that people are really receptive if you build those relationships.
I would agree. I think just about any time that I was in a situation, I mean, I'm kind of like what Emma was saying. I don't think I would have been in a situation where I would have been asking something of somebody or whatever if I didn't kind of know that I was in a situation where they would be willing to and want to help. So I would say definitely. I mean, there's been people that I've met along the way that have been less helpful than others, you know, maybe because they were still working on their own thing at the same time and didn't have as much bandwidth as others or whatever. But, you know, it's definitely largely positive for sure.
Yeah.
And I feel the same way that everybody's talking about. You got to pass it on, man.
Exactly. And I guess I wanted to ask that question because along my path, I definitely haven't really ran into anyone that wasn't interested in helping. And I think just with the last 3 sessions of Courtside Seats, for anyone who doesn't really know how we got to this point, I think I reached out to Katie Hamilton and asked, like, do you think this would be like a cool idea? And do you know who? And all of a sudden it was, well, don't forget about Robyn. And oh, here's Dawna. She's an official who I had no idea. And then, oh, don't forget about Emma. And I was just getting a bunch of names. And for anyone listening, the feedback I know from Robyn was, I'm available at any time, which was funny. And so I just, want to acknowledge that for the most part, if anyone's seeking mentorship or some advice, that most people are kind enough that they want to share and they're willing to share. So don't hesitate to reach out and ask. And if they say no, there's probably somebody else that has a similar knowledge in certain areas that will be willing to help you. So I know setting this up, I was like, oh, I might not get that many people because they're busy, but to have 10 and like everyone had mentioned, there's so many more, and not just from the East Coast. So again, giving back, I think is really important. So, I know this isn't the end, but thank you for taking the time for your evenings and afternoons or whatever time you are, Robyn. I have no idea anymore. It's all a blur.
I've really thrown you off, Tasia, haven't I?
Well, when the sun starts to go down here and everyone else, like the sun's in the background, it just throws me off a little bit.
That's funny. Yeah. Tasia, if I may, I just think there's something to be said about like women loving on women. And I think that there's like, I know I'm super fortunate to have like a high school group that I'm really close with. But I would say that the cool thing is, I think we're transitioning from this, like, I have something, so I don't want any other woman to touch that culture, to like, hey, I want other women to rise and to get positions like mine and to be doing things like that. And I think that's by far my number one most favorite thing, is that women are getting out of this like catty, ridiculous, it's mine and you can't have any. And it's like, yeah, come on, let's all do this together.
Yeah. Carly mentioned I don't know if anyone had a chance to hear her talk about a story that Steve Stewart had told her about, lobsters, and don't pull the lobster back into the pot if they're just about to escape, push them up and heave them out of the boiling pot. So I agree with building each other up is critical.
Sorry, I have a urge to say something on that too. I think the mentoring people who are coming up is just as important as recognizing peers and supporting them as well. And after being in the coaching environment at the university level, I have felt among peers, this tension of, I know it's a competitive environment where I want to beat your team, but as human beings, I find a lot of the time that gets lost. Specifically, I'm talking among peers. I think there's a different feeling and atmosphere, as Robyn was saying, that people are now starting to bring up, people who are coming behind them. But I think it's important to acknowledge as well that it's just as important with people who are on the same level as you or are your peers. Because again, why are we doing this? Well, we're doing it because they're wonderful young women and men that we're trying to develop, right? And just because I look over one team and you look over another team, they're all still going to grow up to be wonderful young women and men, right? Eventually not on a basketball team. So I think it's just important to also acknowledge, like, mentorship doesn't have to be, a level by level thing. It can also be like on a peer level of just like gaining respect for people who are at your level and trying to help them as well, understanding that it's going to benefit a lot of other people.
Yeah, I think referees are way better at this than us. Just saying. Yeah. Refs are way better at being like, hey, you guys, let's all go have dinner together. Coaches are like, I'm playing you tomorrow, so I hate you. It's really hard, like, honestly, like, because if you think about coaching, we're on an island. There's no one else who really gets what we do except another coach, and yet we're like opposing that other coach. So you don't feel like you can be friends with them. And I think that's one thing that I learned from being at the college level, is we had such phenomenal coaches that everybody felt like it was okay if we won or lost, and they were still good people. But I think refs are so much better at this than coaches.
Yeah, and I think there's even the piece of, Emma, you mentioned that if I'm coaching a team and you're coaching a team, we're still trying to accomplish the same thing with the athletes that we're coaching. So having a better relationship with the coach that you're competing against is important, because the athletes are watching you. And that also goes with how we are communicating with officials and how we're communicating with fans, if ever you have to, go and address anyone in the audience. But keeping in mind as coaches and as officials or leaders in our sport, that the people that we're trying to help they're the ones that are watching us and they're learning from us. And if I'm a coach that yells and gets a lot of technicals all the time, and I coach an athlete for a couple of years and they get into coaching later on, their experience is usually like, oh, well, this is what my coach did, so this is, how I'm going to act. And you see it even in the way that we coach. I know from my experience when I first started coaching, you take from who coached you and you apply it to your team, and then you start to build your own practice plans and your own coaching philosophies. But it was that I learned from the coaches that were coaching me. So the same thing applies to how we interact and communicate with the people that are leading the sport, and just having that element of respect. And yes, we all want to win. We're competitive people, but if it's not you, how can you support somebody else and enjoy their successes as well? Because maybe in the next year it might be you being the winner, and you want that support from your colleagues.
Mm.
I'm just looking at my notes. How do you think, and I know like COVID-19 is a big thing, and I know the 3 or 4 of us were chatting briefly before everyone joined that things are starting to open up, and basketball courts are kind of open, kind of not open when they're outdoors. And I'm just wondering, for our 2 coaches that I guess that are on the call, how do you think that will look when your athletes get back in the gym? Like, what do you think your most important piece will be? Is it going to be getting them physically back to where they need to be, or do you think you're going to have to pay more attention to the mental component of them having not been in game situations for, a couple months? Or both?
I don't have an answer. I think that every athlete's going to be different. They're all going through this in a different way. I have some athletes who are like, oh my gosh, I'm getting more stuff done than ever before, and I'm like killing it in my workouts, and I feel amazing. And I have other athletes who are like, yeah, I haven't done anything in 3 days, and I feel like I don't want to leave my bed. Mm-hmm. So we're really trying to touch base on a weekly basis and really communicate how everyone's doing, because mental health is an epically important thing right now, and that's just something that we have to continue to discuss and deal with. So I don't know what the answer is, but I think it'll be a different world. It's not going to be like we can just step into it normally.
Yeah, a lot of zone defenses. Keep your 6 feet in distance. That's my advice for everyone. No one would get sick. Everyone wears gloves when they play. It's perfect.
100% zone. That's literally my nightmare. Okay, cool, Tasia.
100% zone. Great. Emma, what about your squad and even the athletes you're working with at Point Guard College? What will be the focus when everything's back to kind of that new normal? Is it going to be mental or physical, or obviously a combination of the two?
Yeah, that's a challenging question. And I think, so through PGC, we have a number of different programs that we're running, but one of them is a mentorship program. And so I'm working one-on-one with athletes, building them workout plans, planning for what does the next month look like, that kind of thing. It scares me a little bit, my experiences so far, because I have this feeling that so many athletes aren't understanding the value of this time that they actually have. Because normally you go from high school season to club season to provincial season to high school season, and it's like there's no off season ever. And that's really it's this manic circle. And so there's not time for development. And so this time, ideally, in my opinion, from my perspective, could be an incredible growth opportunity for athletes to get really better physically, mentally, at their basketball skills. But from what I'm experiencing is that's not the case with a lot of athletes. And so I have a feeling that when things get back to it, it's going to take a little while in all aspects of the game for the athletes to just get a feel of, oh yeah, this basketball thing. Oh yeah, training all the time. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I forgot about that skill, right? I haven't done that for a while. Or as Robyn was saying, I think that all will play into some mental, some challenges there that'll really need to be supported. So, I unfortunately fear that athletes just won't be at where they should be, considering the time they have to develop right now. But some will, and it'll stand out, I think. But there's still time. There's still a lot of time for athletes to develop and get better. And so, as coaches, I think we have to be patient and understand that it's going to be ugly for a while. It's like coming back after Christmas break. It always looks a little ugly, and so just let them kind of grow through that experience.
Just as everyone's getting better, it's just a bit of a nosedive.
No.
Merry Christmas break.
Dawna, what do you think it'll look like from an NBA perspective, if you have any information on that, or even what it'll look like when it comes to your position with the Raptors?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I only know as much as anybody else has heard lately about, them opening the practice gyms and trying to get as many athletes in, depending on their jurisdiction, as they can in for workouts. The idea of the season, whenever they can start it being without spectators, that would just be so weird, but I don't see how they get around it. I don't know if it'll affect our roles or not. You got to think that the bare bones of a table crew and the refs still have to be there to make it happen. But they have to have media to make money. So I don't know. It's going to be, it's all changing so fast, and everything's, so I read something the other day about them trying to, find, whether it's Miami or wherever they end up, playing some kind of a shortened season. And yet the disparity between the ability to prepare for that and for example, any of the Raptors players who stayed here versus didn't, to get either back to train and then back down or down there. Like, it's just, the logistics get crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's, like you said, every day it seems like there's something else that pops up, and, you think the NBA is going to play in Disney, and then I think I saw something about maybe the WNBA trying to have a bit of a season there too, and it'll be I feel like everyone's kind of waiting day by day to figure out what's next, and when can we get back in the gym, and what does that look like? Like, is it just 5 athletes in the gym at a time, or it's challenging. A question for the coaches: how are you dealing with recruiting during COVID-19? That good?
I mean, we're recruiting. That it's just all online. We're not right now. Youth Sports has said we're not allowed to bring any athletes to campus, and obviously I can't even go to campus even if I wanted to. So everything I do is watching video, talking to kids on the phone. Sometimes we do a lot of Zoom or Google Meets. We use Google Meets. So basically I'm just trying to keep going as well as possible. Where our roster is basically set for 2020, 2021. So we're now just looking into the year after. And the nice thing is people are pretty understanding that you're like, well, I can't bring you to campus. And they're like, oh, that's so weird. No, they get it. So it's just like, what do you mean? I don't understand. No, we just do what we can. You just keep keeping on. That's all.
Emma, same thing, I'm guessing.
Yeah. To be honest, I'm not involved in our recruiting right now at all, just because of my job, and we've got Maddie as the full-time coach and Chantel on that. But I know that they're in meetings like every day, and from what I've heard, it's really about building a connection at this point. And yeah, again, it's an opportunity for coaches to like probably reach out to lots of different kids and just start building a connection. But like Robyn said, thinking about 1, 2, 3 years down the road, it's I guess a good opportunity for that. But otherwise, I don't have a whole lot of insight into what's going on there.
Do either of you use, Emma, you'd mentioned it, like this is a perfect opportunity for athletes to be getting better. Are there ways that you can figure out that a recruit is or is not doing what they might need to do? Or if there's someone who's like, if I were to reach out and say, hey, Robyn, like I really want to go to MRU, please recruit me. And you might think that's a great idea. I send you my really great mixtape with clean music. And you eventually find out that maybe I'm not even training. So how do you have those conversations with recruits that are coming in that are not doing what they need to do, and does that make you second guess anything?
Well, for us, like the ones that are coming in for September, we're tracking everything. Like we're just treating our incoming athletes like they're already on the team, because they've all lost their seasons. They lost their high school season, they lost their club season. They don't have anyone to kind of mentor them or look after them right now. And so, and they're coming to us. So it's not a question of whether or not. It's like, yeah, they're in. So we're treating them like any other athlete. They have full weight training programs. We're tracking all their training. They have IPP workouts for skills. We're doing a weekly video session for understanding and for breakdown. So I think for me, if an athlete isn't doing something, we're having a conversation about it like right away, because that time is team time. And as much as we know that athletes are having the ups and downs, like we're trying to hold everyone accountable to what we would usually hold them accountable to, because we don't have anything different as a measuring stick right now.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I can't speak to a whole lot of that right now either.
Yeah. Dawna, question for you. Your picture, I believe, I don't even know if I had the right one up, but you obviously have officiated Kobe, I believe at I want to say the Olympics. Am I correct in that statement? What was that experience like? And I guess officiating like some of the top level NBA athletes, because I don't think many of us are going to have that opportunity.
Yeah, it was a highlight, that's for sure. I don't know, you're I want to say starstruck. You're intimidated. That's probably the biggest thing. You're intimidated. You know, somebody, I forget who it was, touched on this last week, the idea of, you know, getting opportunities, and you feel like maybe part of the reason, or a big part of the reason that you got an opportunity, is because you actually were female. And so there's that much more pressure to do a good job when you have those. That's honestly my recollection of just about all of that, is just being so stressed not to mess up, you know, and to do it as good of a job and sort of disappear into the background as I could. I mean, at the end of the day, when you get past the tip off and into the game, it's a game, and they're big, and they're my biggest like memory of what was it like to ref NBA players is just how massively strong and how much LeBron can affect the game. Like to actually be on the court with him and feel when he turned it on, and know that there was absolutely nobody that could stop him, and just his presence was just, it was amazing. I don't even like LeBron, but it was pretty cool.
Yeah, that I remember when I had the opportunity, I guess, to sweep the floor at like the men's AUS way back in the day when I was in, I don't know, junior high, maybe in high school. And I remember Jonathan Bell, when he was with St. Avex, like was doing a transition layup, and I'm sitting under the net thinking, I'm like, this man is going to land on top of me and crush me. So I like, when I'm thinking about how I felt in that moment, like I couldn't imagine being an official, and you're kind of constantly, yes, you're moving with the game. I get that, but at the same time, like they come flying out of bounds, like this is not going to end well for anybody. Be intimidating. We have about 6 minutes left. I don't see any other questions coming in from the group, but I'll kind of monitor that as we go. So the question that I've been asking everyone, because I think that a lot of times we all hold on to something that was like really, it was a really special moment to us. I know Carly Clark's was her UPEI team winning on the Saturday night over at Munn, and she said, we won't talk about the Sunday morning, but that's okay. But just, you know, holding on to that piece. And for me, that stuck out because, you know, when you're looking at Carly's resume, you see everything she's done at an international level, and to have something like that I'm not sure many people would know of as being one of the most important times of her basketball career was really, I don't know, it stuck out to me because I think I was expecting her to say like, oh, standing on the podium or qualifying for the Olympics. And And I know that those are huge moments, but I thought that she did a really great job at kind of giving us a time that not a lot of us would see, because it wouldn't have been necessarily on TV, and maybe not a lot of people would have been following UPEI at the time, because I know that the record wasn't exactly the number one team in the conference. So the question is, if you had to take one highlight from your basketball life, whether it was as an athlete or in your coaching career or officiating career, and put it into the video montage of one shining moment. So I'm picturing us like the NCAA, everything's wrapped up, and they take like all those really great clips from all the games, and usually they're highlights of different things that have happened during that tournament. If you could take something from your life, what would it be? Like, what is the thing that when you want to brag or talk about, this is what I've done, you know, what is it? What's the moment for you? It's a big question.
Very big question. I'll jump in. So I think for me, this year felt like a lot of impossible when I took the job. Like, I didn't really know what I was getting into. Mount Royal has had some struggles since they've become a U Sports school, and last year they won 2 games. So I think the highlight of the year for me was our second weekend. We're playing Regina, and Regina has always been a powerhouse out here, and they're a very good program coached by a very good coach. And we managed to beat them in their second game. So we won a game our first 2 weekends, and we already had as many wins as they had the year before. And I kid you not, I walked in that locker room and those kids were just so happy. Like, they were like, we could have won the championship. Like, and that sounds bad because you always teach your athletes, like, hey, you shouldn't over celebrate. Like, you want to make sure you have perspective. But I think in that moment, it was like, oh my gosh, we're not going to just win 2 games this year. Like, this is the most amazing, most exciting, most incredible feeling to know that, like, it's going to be a different year. And like, I just think that was the most invigorating thing for me as a coach. I went back to, you know, practice on Monday, and I was excited. And I think those athletes just kept me hungry all year long. So it was cool.
Was it, you said it was in Regina?
No, it was at home.
It was at home?
We only won 1 game on the road. So, but it's good, little wins. It's fine.
You hear those stories. Emma or Dawna?
Go ahead, Emma.
Okay, sure. Yeah, so mine probably seems really boring to other people. And you can't really say it's a moment, but like, you could get a clip of something that would represent this. Would just be playing with my sister. So Abby, yeah, she's on the call. Hey, Ab. So Abby and I are only a year and a half apart, and we've played together when we were in high school, all through university, and then professionally as well. And so, like, as you can imagine, we're very close now, but I think the experiences that we've had playing basketball together can't compare to really any experiences that I've had with another person, really, because it was, you know, such a long period of time, and we had some really, really, really crappy experiences together. We also had some really, really, really amazing experiences together. And so I think just having that opportunity to play with somebody for so long that you're so close with, I'm sure other people have had similar things with, like, best friend or something like that, but it was just pretty special to be able to play at such high levels together. So yeah, and get to be on, like, the same lineup together. So yeah, that'd be it for me.
I feel like you guys are like the number 1 recruits if ever you guys are back in Nova Scotia. Like, how do we get 2 6-footers on our team? This is what we need.
Women's league.
Exactly. Dawna, what about you?
So mine, you know, sort of similar to Emma, you couldn't really necessarily put it in a montage, but it was a really special experience for me, I guess, in a more of a TSN turning point. I had been roughing for a number of years, and was kind of bumping up against, never quite, I think I was probably maybe reffing university at that time, but never reffing, at the national level yet, and wasn't sure I was going to make it, and should I continue with this and that sort of thing. And as an official, there's camps all summer, training camps and things that you can attend in the States, and they have sort of invitational at the time camps in Canada that you can apply for. And I was at this camp for this summer, and this senior referee was evaluating me on the court I was reffing, and it was, really wanted to do a good job. And it was, in my recollection, it was just a train wreck. The person that was, on the clock kept forgetting to start the clock or stop the clock, and we had the wrong score, and it was all this stuff. It just one thing after another, and I was like, okay, this is it. He's gonna tear me apart when the game is over, and I might as well just hang him up. It's not gonna happen for me. And we went over to do our post game, and he just said, "You guys did such a great job dealing with all of the things you had to deal with on this court." And he was so positive, and I just floated out of that gym. I was so oh my gosh, felt so, I don't know, validated or something. And I things, just improved from then on. I don't even know, maybe that gave me an internal confidence after that it was never as bad as it seemed or something. But it was, I'll always remember that for sure.
That's awesome. When the score and when the score is wrong and the clock's still going,
oh my gosh,
everyone in the gym participates in telling the poor minor official over there, get off your phone or something. And really, it's for anyone who hasn't been a minor official, when you have the book and the clock, it is very challenging. So a lot of times, yes, I'm sure I've been someone who's been on my phone doing that, but for the most part, the people that are minor officials are not on their phones, and it's just, there's a lot to pay attention to. So I think when we're talking about being kind to our peers, let's also try to be kind to our minor officials, especially the young ones that are there on a Saturday or Sunday, and it might be brand new, and having someone yelling, the score, the clock, you missed a point. It's you can get pretty anxious. I know it makes me nervous, thinking about that. So that's my one bit of advice to everyone that's listening is, just, I think Robyn mentioned it, we're all humans, and we're trying to use basketball as something to develop the athletes and the young men and women coming behind us. And, we have to be nice and understand that we are going to make mistakes every once in a while, but together the goal is to make basketball fun, which I think a lot of times we forget about because we're so competitive that, it has to be fun in order for you to want to continue on with either playing or coaching or officiating or whatever it is that you happen to be doing in the basketball world. But it is 8:33. I'm going to give my mom 30 seconds to come up and say hello. I think I can hear her.
Mm-hmm.
She says she's coming up to say hi. She's en route. I can hear her. We don't have that many stairs to climb, I swear.
She's just doing extra stairs.
Extra stairs. Here she is. Her cameo.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. How are you?
It's great. How are you?
Good to see you. I'm doing well.
Oh,
You guys did great.
she's so kind.
Do you have any advice for anybody watching, Liz? What advice do you have?
I'm being fair. I did my advice a long time ago. You guys did great.
Oh,
Thank
my.
you.
She had a really great golf game today, everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Liz says congratulations, Emma.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
She'll have
Congratulations, everyone. She said I had my eye on it when she was talking.
So sparkly.
Oh my. Well, got some people saying great session for that's directed at each and every one of you, and thank you for taking the time to jump on again for us. I'm just going to answer that, make sure I don't miss anything. So thank you for taking the time to join on the third session. We're hoping to maybe do some more in the future with our provincial coaches, but for me, this one was critical, I think, for showing our young ladies that basketball for us can continue, and there are people that have been from the East Coast that have gone on to do some really great things, and I just think it's very powerful to have not just you guys on, but our 2 sessions from 2 weeks ago and last week. So thank you for sharing that and for being a bit of a mentors in some sense to everyone that was listening, and just know that you're very much appreciated, and I hope to stay in touch with each and every one of you. I know I'll probably hear from Emma and Robyn, say, gotten to know you over the years, but Dawna, you as well. I think this was very valuable for me from that official perspective. I think a lot of times we forget that without the officials, the game doesn't exist. So a critical part to basketball. We've got some people saying hi to everyone, so awesome.
Thanks, Tasia.
Yeah, no
it's
problem.
been great.
Thanks, Tasia.
And enjoy the rest of your evening.
Night, guys.
Thanks, Robyn. Thanks, Dawna.